Hello everyone. Today I will tell you about the most bloody battle of Eagle's Fortress. Subscribe to the channel and we begin. The German High Command ordered a full-scale assault on the fortress in northeast Poland. Germany considered the Russian Empire a serious threat to advance into other territories, and the Soviet fortress was a major obstacle in this endeavor. Germany tried to gain control of the fort 3 times, all without success. The fourth time, however, was different. 14 battalions, siege weapons and sappers were sent to the hot spot for a final assault on the fort. Unlike the other battles, they had another weapon: gaseous chlorine. There were 1,000 men in all the fortress, many of them drafted as militiamen. On the 4th of August at 4 o'clock, a gaseous cloud engulfed the fortress. When inhaled, the substance transformed into salty acid. The soldiers were completely defenseless, as masks and gas masks were missing. The Germans, with a triumphant look, marched into the inner fortification of the fort. They were met with overwhelming terror. The 100 Russians who had already traded their lives rose from the dead and with bloody faces rushed into the attack. A bloody massacre awaited 7,000 German soldiers. Each of them turned in the opposite direction. The Russians were able to repel the attack and frighten the enemy with their zombie-like advance. This is another lesson in why chemical warfare is banned around the world. Fortress of the Soviets. When it comes to war, fighting in the trenches on the Western Front comes to mind. However, the toughest battles were on the Eastern Front. The fortress Orlov, standing on the northeastern part of Poland, on the border between Russia and Germany. The fort was constantly renewed by the government. The destruction of this fortification was crucial to the Germans, who saw Russia as a significant problem for their domination. The fortress was a multi-layered, heavy defense. Defensive structures, 2 lines of fire were ready to stop any attack. The first line consisted of a whole network of shallow trenches and barbed wire. If the first line fell, the second had deeper trenches, more barbed wire, and machine gun nests. If the enemy could get inside the Soviet fortress, he would be an easy target for close combat. The Soviet fortress was the target of several attacks during the early stages of World War I. The first attack occurred in September 1914, when the German 9th Army attacked the area with at least 40 battalions. However, they were repulsed by Soviet soldiers, aided by artillery. Germany also attempted a later frontal attack in 1915. Fierce fighting lasted almost a week. The first line of defense was captured. The Soviet soldiers had no choice but to retreat. The German soldiers could not hold their positions, and 2 days later retreated. On February 13, 1915, the Germans returned with their latest heavy artillery. According to eyewitnesses, shells hit the fortress for 3 days, every 4 or 5 minutes. After the end of the operation, most of the buildings inside were destroyed, but the Germans were never able to break in. In midsummer, the Germans again prepared an attack on the Soviet fortress, this time using chemical weapons. When the 14 battalions were brought to the battle, the German field commander, Field Marshal Paul von Hindenburg, ordered 40 batteries, consisting of 1,000 cylinders of chlorine gas. Human contact with this substance can be dangerous. It turns into salty acid and quickly corrodes the flesh. The only way to protect yourself from this substance is to wash it off your skin and hope that the wounds are not as deep. Before the offensive, the Germans waited for good weather to use their latest weapons against 500 soldiers and 400 militiamen. On the afternoon of August 6, they attacked from batteries with cylinders of chlorine gas. They fired all the shells at once and waited for the effect. The chlorine and bromine substances covered the entire fort in 10 minutes, and in another 20 minutes reached a distance of over 20 kilometers. All living things died in the area. The leaves of the trees turned yellow and curled. The grass turns black and lay down in a layer. Chlorine oxide lay on all copper objects, weapons, equipment, sinks and tanks. All those outside were quickly killed by the gases. As the bodies' airways were destroyed, the fighters of the first line of defense were only watching, in their haste trying to put on elementary means of protection, but it didn't help against such a terrible weapon. The gas continued to spread, and those who were inside inhaled gas vapors in lower concentrations, which meant that their deaths were more painful. The Germans wearing gas masks moved toward the fort. About 100 wounded and already dying soldiers, led by Vladimir Kotlinsky, quickly developed a plan to counterattack. They decided to fight to their last breath. Taking arms in their hands and screaming with their last breath, they went on the offensive against the Germans. The opponents tried to shoot at the Soviet soldiers, but the luck and will of the fighters scared them badly into hysterics. The German soldiers, frightened by the bloody carnage and the constant readiness of the Russians to fight, threw their weapons on the ground and immediately fled, crushing their comrades. While the German soldiers were retreating and trying to regroup, 2 more companies of Soviet soldiers managed to arrive at the fort in time to retake it before the new offensive. On the same day, the entire 100 soldiers died from gases affecting their lungs. Sometime later, the Russians surrendered the fort to the Germans, forming a new line of defense by Nikolai.